Hey, this is Mark Gallo, and I'm here with my Mojotone Reverb Champ kit. And I'm going to be doing some mods today. I just want to show you some improvements that we can make on this amp in order to have it have less hum that you normally get in this amp. So there are two sources of hum on this amp when you first get it. And it's not a problem with the kit. It's definitely not a problem with the Champ. It's just the way that the amp sort of sometimes works depending on how you wire it and how you set it up. And one of them is this output transformer. So normally the output transformer connects the tubes to the loudspeaker through this transformer. And this transformer typically mounts on the underside of this chassis. It mounts actually under here someplace. And it's very close to this power transformer. What I noticed was that when you turn this amp on, immediately you started to hear a faint hum in the loudspeaker, and that's way before the tubes have even warmed up. And so if the tubes haven't warmed up, if the instant you turn on power you hear hum, that's a sign that it's coming from something that has nothing to do with really the wiring or the power supply, because if the tubes are not warm, there's no current that can go through the tubes yet, okay? And so that was I determined that was like a magnetic coupling. So something was coupling the power supply into this transformer, and then that magnetic coupling was actually driving the loudspeaker. So what I did is, as you can see, I added these long wires to the transformer so that I could take the transformer off of the chassis and I could put it somewhere in the bottom of the case. Now that's not really the best way to make an amp, because two of these leads here are actually high voltage leads. This is actually plate supply and a plate voltage, so these are going to be in the hundreds of volts, and so you don't want to touch them. But I try to do a good job of heat shrinking them and insulating them and using wire that's rated for the voltages that we need. And it's my amp, and I feel like I'm okay with that. It immediately got rid of that hum. So you turned on the switch and the hum was gone. No more hum when it powers up. Second source of hum is that after the amp starts to warm up, then you start to hear another type of hum that's not coming from the guitar when the guitar volume is turned down. And that's coming from the fact that the original Champ uses a power switch inside the volume switch, okay? So you hear this click. This doesn't have a traditional on-off switch. This has a volume switch that, it's a volume knob that has a switch in it, so that when you first turn it, it clicks on and then you can set the volume, okay? Now, if you look behind, you see that the volume knob has a typical potentiometer connections, but it also has these connections for the switch, for the power switch. Now, why is this not good, okay? Well, why did they do it this way? Well, they did it this way because it's cheaper, right? It's one place to mount the switch and one place to mount the knob, and you can keep everything smaller and it's convenient. But here's where it's not good. It's not good first of all, for a practical reason. Let's say you set the amp up and you set the volume where exactly you like it, and now you have to stop playing and you have to come back later. Well, you want to turn it off, you have to do this, right? And now you have to find where you were before. Now, that's not terrible with one knob, right? No big deal. But that's not what we're used to today. What we're used to today is having an amp, you set it the way you like it, and you turn it off. But the second more important reason why this is not good is because the electrical power wires, okay, are going right up against the back of this potentiometer. And that's where you have some high, well, I wouldn't call it high impedance at this point because it's after the first buffer stage, but you have signal here and it can pick up some hum from the back of this potentiometer. And worse is that because you have to run the wires from the power supply over to the potentiometer, you have more opportunity for that power supply hum to get picked up by other parts of the circuit. So what did I decide to do? And here's where my mods come in. So originally in here, okay, there was a fuse holder. Right? That's the normal, setup for the amp, is that you have this pot that has a power switch built in, and you have an indicator light that tells you when the amp is on, and then you have this fuse holder, right? And the fuse holder holds the fuse in case something goes wrong with the amp, you can change the fuse. So I took the fuse holder out. That's gone, okay? And the reason why is because I wanted a space here so that I could put a Mojotone Carlington Carling switch inside there. So this is going to go in there, right? This is going to be a power switch now. I'm going to fit that in there, and we're going to have a power switch to be able to turn it on and off. This will allow me to put the power leads close to the power supply and the transformer and not have them run around, and there will be no power leads on the input potentiometer either. Okay, so that solves that problem. Here's a new potentiometer from Mojotone, same value. It's a 1 meg ohm audio taper, and that's going to get replaced in there, and that's going to keep it nice and quiet. Now you might say, well, what are you going to do about the fuse? You can't just have an amp without a fuse, and that's right. So what I got here is I have a, I would call this sort of like a chassis mount fuse, but not really. It's really more of a panel. Well, it's not a panel mount either. It's basically an internal mount fuse holder. It's a fuse holder where you need to open up the amp in order to change it. And that's okay, because how often is this fuse going to blow, right? Not often at all, only if something really serious goes wrong. And when that does happen, you can just sort of remove this rear panel and get access to this fuse pretty easily. So I'm going to mount this somewhere inside the power supply close to the transformer to keep my leads really short, okay? I'll have a fuse protection in the amp that's inside. I'll have a power switch in the front here, which allows me to turn on and off the amp. I'll have a new pot that allows me to set it the way I like it and leave it alone. And we should have an amp that now doesn't have hum either on power up or after it warms up. Now the amp still has a little hum even when you do these modifications, because it's a Class A amp, so there's a lot less humbucking built into it. And also, I like to play this with single coil guitars, and they're just prone to hum anyway. So when we do the demos, you'll see some hum, but it's still a lot less than was coming out of this amp when it was, you know, first put together, and a lot less than a lot of champs that you get, vintage or modern, because they have more of that tradition to keep the classic design with the click switch and some other stuff. So thanks for watching, and I'll post another video that shows some more photos that show when the mods are done. And hopefully, if you have a champ kit or a champ of your own and you find this valuable, you could take some of these lessons and maybe put them in your own amp to improve them. A couple cool features here is that there is a resistor right here that if you bypass with a capacitor, you can get it to have more of a bright sound. So that's a mod that I might do later, where I put a toggle switch and you put that in and out. And there's a 22K resistor, which I believe is somewhere, I think right here, okay, right next to the big power resistor. This resistor here is the feedback to the amplifier. And this amp sounds really cool with this resistor removed. And so it would be nice to have a switch that can turn this in and out. I might, when I'm done, try to fit in a couple of little toggle switches right here to allow me to put those mods in and out of my amp just to have fun. So we'll see where that goes. That'll be coming next. Thanks for watching, and more to come.